I see a ton of agents really struggling with this. So hope this message lands with you guys as I get my steps in. So here's the deal. I just had a newer agent join the Listing Agent Academy coaching program. And on our first coaching session, we always set up a business plan. And just for context, I'll give you kind of high level what that business plan could look like, because it's going to matter in today's message. So the business plan says, okay, if this is your goal, we back into the number and we say, okay, based on that goal, we've got averages, average conversion ratios from agents that we've been working with for the past 5, 6, 7 years. And we have all the data to back this up. So the initial business plan, once we have the goal, we can back into it and it will generate how many listings you need to take, how many listing appointments you need to go on, how many conversations you need to have, how many hours of prospecting, so on and so forth. So she had this plan, and in one of our first coaching sessions, we're talking about, how things are going. And she said something to me that I said, wow, I think a lot of people struggle with this, and that is this. She's like, okay, my business plan says I need 22 conversations a day, and I need to generate 2 high quality leads a day, which I'll talk more about that in just a second. And then I need to, as a result of that, I need to generate 2 qualified listing appointments per week, which will result in me getting my 1 listing per week that I need. I'm hitting the numbers, Brandon. I'm hitting 22 conversations a day, and I'm putting 2 people a day into my pipeline, and I'm not getting 1 listing a week. What's wrong? To which I respond, and we start getting into a conversation. And I asked her a couple of questions. One of the questions I asked her was, well, tell me about the leads that you're putting into the pipeline. Like, how do those conversations typically end? And she's like, well, when I have a decent conversation with a prospect and they're not ready to meet, I will simply tell them, hey, well, I'll follow up with you. And if things change, maybe we could talk about meeting at some point in the future. Is that okay? And she's like, the prospect says, okay. And the call's over. And I said, okay, tell me about the follow-up calls with those types of prospects. And she's like, well, that's just the thing. They never answer my calls, and they always seem like they're ducking my calls, or if I do get these people back on the phone, it's often that they tell me they're not interested any longer, or they've already done business with another agent. So yet again, Brandon, I ask you, what do you think I'm doing wrong? So here's the deal. This is a classic sign of forcing people into the database or the pipeline to check a list. Because the issue or the downside to the business plan and the average numbers that plan suggests you need to hit in order to hit your goal are just that. They're averages. So stick with me for a second. We're going to talk about forcing. We're going to talk about these numbers. We're going to talk about all that. So when you build a business plan and you don't have your own conversion ratios, and I'm giving you ratios based on averages of thousands of people, your ratios are going to be different. So that means that if you have a goal of 1 listing per week, and the business plan based off of averages of people in the past suggests that you need 150 conversations and you need to generate about 10 leads per week in order to get 2 listing appointments, to go on 2 listing appointments to convert 1, well, your numbers, that might not be the case. It might mean that if you're doing 150 conversations and you got 10 leads, which we'll talk about what a lead is in just a second, and you didn't get 2 listing appointments or 1 listing for that week, your ratios then as a result aren't what the business plan suggested. This is why we have to do the monthly business plan reviews, because your numbers are your numbers. So there's a baseline conversion ratio, but then there's an actual. So when you do an activity over any length of time, all of you know this, which is the law of averages, you establish a new average. And if you're prospecting on a consistent basis, in about 30 days, you will establish your own ratios. And for you, that might mean this. That might mean that based on your current skill set, that it takes more than 150 conversations to set 3 or 4 appointments a week to go on to take 1. In your first couple of months, for the first 90 days, as you're building your skills, as you're building your pipeline, it might mean you need 250 conversations. So what's the first point? The first point is a difference between checking a box like, okay, I did what the business plan said, I'm not getting the result. Well, that means because your ratios need to be altered. That the original business plan that we came up with, those are a baseline. We have to compare the baseline to your actuals and then make the adjustments. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, let's talk about the second issue. The second issue is when we get into this mindset of checking a box. Okay, the business plan says I need this, and I'm just gonna check the box, but they're not actual conversations, they're not actual leads, and we're just forcing humans into some type of CRM or database so that we can check the box and say, yep, we got 2 leads today. We end up spinning our wheels, and then we want to come back and say, well, prospecting doesn't work. And it's like, well, hold on for 1 second. Let's talk about it. Let's go deeper. A lot of real estate agents are forcing prospects into their pipeline that aren't real opportunities. And we do this, and I understand why we do it, but the truth is we do it because most of us don't have a healthy pipeline of a high number of quality leads. And so therefore we have, to different varying degrees, but a scarcity mindset. And so when we're prospecting, it's like, damn, I got to get something right now. So let me put this person in there. I'd rather have something than nothing. But most of these prospects are a force. They don't have high motivation. We don't qualify them. We're just throwing anybody in the database that we talk to in hopes that it will turn into something down the road. Here's the question. My question for you is this. If you knew right now that this person that you're talking to was never going to do business with you, when would you want to know? And for me, the answer is clear. I want to know right now. And, the thought of like, well, just put them in your database. You never know what's going to happen in the future. Right. I'm saying, what if you did? What if you had a crystal ball and you knew that this person was never going to do business with you? Because now the question comes down to, we're in business, right? I mean, that's the key thing. We're in business. And if you're in business, the goal is to generate profit, generate revenue, unless you're running a nonprofit. That's a joke, but I think a lot of realtors will get that because a lot of realtors run a nonprofit. It's like, I'm just collecting data in this database. Well, if you're interested in that, do it. I'm not. I'm in business to provide a service to the community, as a result to generate a profit and provide for my family. So the question then becomes again, if you knew this person was never going to do business with you, when would you want to know? most of you would say right now. Well, we got to stop forcing people into our database that are never going to do business with us. So instead of forcing, all we have to do is ask. So what I train agents on doing is following this framework. This is how we identify a high quality opportunity or a high quality lead versus not. Number one, the prospect has to have clear motivation. They have to have clear motivation. They've got to express clearly that they have a desire to sell the home. And if you just look at that one right there, you probably would have a lot less leads, and it's okay, because a lot of people are super vague, like, I'll sell maybe one time, I don't know, we'll sell sometime in the future, I don't know, we really like it here. Well, that's not clearly expressed motivation. We're looking for prospects to say, yes, we're absolutely looking to sell. So they have the desire, they've expressed that clearly. The next thing is, number two, would be they share a specific timeline for selling. So they have a clear desire to sell. The next thing is they express clear timelines. We're looking to sell this spring, this summer, this fall, this year, this month, this week. Specific timeline. Number three, they're not committed to another real estate agent. Now, I know most people know a real estate agent. That's not what we're looking at here. What we're looking at is, are they committed to doing business with another real estate agent? Or are they open to giving you the opportunity to earn their business? So as you're having conversations with prospects, it's not that we know they know someone that's in the business, so does everybody. But are they committed to doing business with that person, or are they open to the idea, or are they closed-minded to the idea of giving us an opportunity to earn their business? We have to ask. That's how we know, is this a real opportunity, or am I forcing this? Number four on that list, probably the most important, the prospect invites you to follow up. It's not you saying to the prospect, well, Mr. Prospect, thanks for your time this morning. I'll stay in touch. And the prospect just being polite, saying, okay, they're just being agreeable. They're just saying, okay, great, click. They never have any intention of ever answering your call again. That's different than this, where you talk to the prospect and you say, Mr. Prospect, sounds like getting together right now doesn't make sense. Totally fine. Let me ask you this before I let you go. Would it even make sense for us to have another conversation in the future to talk about potentially getting the house on the market? As an example, we're looking for the prospect to say, well, yeah, why don't you give me a call back in a month? That's what we're looking for. We're looking for the prospect to be the one who initiates the follow-up, because now all we're doing is we're complying with the prospect's wishes. It's not us forcing this onto the prospect. The prospect says, call me back in a month. Well, that's, I think, a lot better for us if we had a prospect who said, call me back this day, this time, in this time frame. You would have zero issue with follow-up. The reason most of us are like, well, what do I say when I call? It's because you forced it. But when the prospect says, call me back, and it's based on an appointment, you know exactly what to say. And then the last one on the list, number 5, is they give you their email address. So those are, let me turn around here. Those are the 5 things. At least it's a framework. You don't have to, it doesn't need to be rigid. You don't need like all 5. It's not like all or nothing. But you need 5, or the goal is to have as many of those 5 as possible before you start putting people into a pipeline. So now let me come full circle and wrap this up. Hopefully this rant made sense today. We have to look at the numbers. You got to start somewhere, right? So we build the business plan. If you haven't been tracking your numbers, it's almost impossible to come up with a business plan. So we can use numbers from other people. I've got many videos on the channel about how to do that. That's a baseline. But that doesn't mean that's going to be your averages. And in fact, it probably won't be. So once you start prospecting, for your first 30 days, you will start to establish your own averages, your own conversion ratios, to which point you have to make changes to the business plan. If 150 conversations a week aren't getting you one listing a week, then something needs to change. That means you need more, maybe you need less, based on how you're converting. And then the other thing is, let's not force leads that aren't real leads into the pipeline so we can check a box. Let's look at where your skills really are at. If you're only getting 5% contact to lead generator ratio, well, now we know we need to work on that first call skills. Hopefully all that makes sense.